Hi, everybody. Radio Free Mormon here with Bill Reel on Mormonism Live. It is Wednesday evening, August 13th, 2025. And at this point in time, I fully expected to be introducing to you Lauren Matthias from Hidden True Crime. And she'd come on the show. We talked about her career and her exploits. Unfortunately, it looks like that's not going to happen. 1/2 hour ago, I received a phone call from Lauren's producer, and without going into specifics, Lauren was called away on an emergency. Certainly was not voluntary on her part in any way. And the producer said that they would try and get back maybe half an hour into the show. I said, "Look, you just take care of business. We'll be fine." And I think it's unlikely, but I put it out there because if it happens, then it'll be great. But just want to let you know that. But that's the bad news. What's the good news, Bill?
Well, the good news is we've got lots of other stuff that I think will make for an interesting conversation through the night. Maybe this is a little more Mormonism After Dark sort of style where people get a chance to call in and comment on some little stories or to share their thoughts maybe on Sunstone, which just happened. But I think there's plenty of interesting things going on that we'll have plenty of things to talk about to fill the time and to be of interest to listeners and viewers.
Yeah, I agree. And so in the last half hour, I've sort of been walking around and picking up things that stand for certain propositions, including this book. I got several books at Sunstone. This is a big book. It's called The Rise of Mormonism. I think it's 1816 to 1844. It's by H. Michael Marquardt. You know him, right? Don't you, Bill?
I know Michael Marquardt for sure.
He's quite a card and an incredible scholar. And in fact, when I saw him, I was with Bill. We were down there at the Union Building at the University of Utah. I think it was Friday. And we saw Michael. And I made a joke to Michael that was based upon my incorrect recollection. I thought that Michael Marquardt had discovered those billing documents for the 1826 trial for Joseph Smith in Bainbridge, New York. And so I made a joke that was based on that. I didn't come out and say that's what I thought, but that's what it was predicated on. It's not true. It's not funny. And maybe that explains why he didn't laugh. But after that, Bill took me aside and said, I think that was Wesley Walters. Oh, no. Yes, it was Wesley Walters, which is why I think it was last Friday night's Mormonism After Dark that we got together, and I made a point of talking about the person who had found those documents and naming him as Wesley Walters. And if you go back and review it, you'll see Bill get a smile on his face and give me a big okay sign. You got it right that time, finally.
Nailed it.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks. But this is a heck of a book, represents a great deal of scholarship, and wanted to thank Michael for that book. Also, published is The Diaries of Carol Lynn Pearson, which has just been published by, I think it's, is it Signature? Yeah, it's Signature. Because I was walking by the table, the Signature Books table. You have to kind of go through the hallway from end to end, and there's tables on both sides. You sort of run the gauntlet through there. And who should be manning this? I had this question at the time. What do you say for manning a table? It was Barbara Brown. Is it okay for Barbara Brown to man a table, or does she have to do something else at the table? I don't know. But anyway, she was in charge of the table, Barbara Brown was, and she actually gave this to me, and she says, well, if you do something with it, like promote it in some way. I'd love to have Carolyn Pearson on the show again and talk to her about this. And but hopefully this will satisfy that request by Barbara Brown. Great lady. I think she's the president of Signature Books and a known and noted historian herself. And I remember opening this up, and let me think here. I just opened this up while I was standing there, and I can't find it again because, of course, it's not going to go immediately to the right page. But it opened up to an entry, and I read it and said, something about to the diary that, well, I've got to apologize for it's been a long time since I wrote. And I told Barbara, I said, geez, that should be like it came to pass in the Book of Mormon. Did you ever keep a journal, Bill?
I never kept a journal, other than maybe just a sporadic thing where I'd write something down every couple of years or something. But no, not really.
Yeah, well, usually journaling happened more in the breach than in the observance.
Mm.
And so you write for a while and then you go for a long time without writing and you come back to it. And so you've got basically no space, right, between these two entries, though they could be months, if not years apart. So the first thing you write is, I'm sorry, it's been a long time, and it's always this apology that ends up appearing at the beginning of many journal entries. So that's that. Got another thing. If you'll hang on just a second. This was not from Sunstone, but it's by mail. Why I Stay Two. There was a one.
I've got number one. Yes.
And remember, number one has that quote that I was pointed to and did the podcast on about David O. McKay believing that Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon, coming through no less a line of authority than Hugh Nibley, who would never have said such a thing if it were not true that he'd said it. So anyway, and this is number two. First one was so good they did it second volume, and I haven't looked at that, but that's put together by Robert Reese. He's the editor. Robert Reese, you may know that name. I think the first one was done by Joe Geisner, who was the editor on volume one. If you have it there, you can confirm it, but you probably can't get up to.
No, it's way over there.
No, that would be like that'd be like Carrie Shirts.
Yeah. Well, I could grab it, but then I would do the same thing I always do, which is take myself off the screen, and then you've got to anyway.
Yeah. Then I got to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Just riffing, baby. Doing the old soliloquy. Escaping the Darkness of Religious Light, Volume 1. Cam M. Clark. This is a guy who's going to be on the show at some point in the future. I think we have him scheduled already. And I think I even know the date, but I'm not going to hazard it. It would be in September. And he's going to come on the show. And he was an OD, I believe, a dentist. And if I'm getting that wrong, I apologize. If you're probably better than a dentist, you're probably a super dentist. What is it, like an not an orthopedist, orthodontist,
mm-hmm.
Right? The orthodontists look down on the dentist and sneer. But I don't know exactly. But I know that he gave services of that sort to an apostle of the church who was still an apostle in the church and had some interesting interactions with him verbally and in writing, which he'll tell us about.
That should be a blast.
That's going to be an absolute mind bender.
Yeah, I love it.
And then over here, let me know if you ever want to say anything, Bill. And then over here, I have the chapter. It's actually the paper by David P. Wright. Last time I was talking about this, I was inexplicably calling him David W. Wright, and I apologize for that. David P. Wright, his book or his paper titled In Plain Terms That We May Understand Joseph Smith's Transformation of Hebrews in Alma 12 through 13. And it deals about, at least partially, about how Joseph Smith used the material in the epistle to the Hebrews in the New Testament in Alma 12 and 13, and also in Ether chapter 12. It's really fascinating. And so I wanted to read that, which I've done, marked it up. This is on the heels of the Radio Free Mormon, in which I read his story in his own words that he had published, at least on the internet, about his excommunication, because David P. Wright, he had been earlier a professor at BYU and got fired, or at least not renewed his contract on the basis of his religious beliefs, and then wrote this paper, which was published by Brent Metcalf as the editor. I think it was Approaches to the Book of Mormon. Anyway, that got him excommunicated in 1994.
New Approaches to the Book of Mormon?
New Approaches, sorry.
Yeah. Talking about firing, just a quick little note here. We covered this on the newscast.
There's my man.
I'll say this and I'll pop right back out again. But Stuart Adams, we went over him. He's the politician who, because of some things that happened in his own family, allegedly, he had
apparently that's true because he's already entered a guilty plea to it.
He's had worked to make changes in the law on sexual assault law, and people have been asking him to resign since he didn't notify anybody that was his reasoning behind it was to help a family member, or at least give them some precedent that the court system and his lawyer could look back on and sort of push for some leniency. He says he will not resign over claims that he influenced a new law to help a family member. So talking about quitting, he will not quit. So there's that going on.
Of course, I wouldn't expect him to. I would be surprised if he did.
No, correct.
So anyway, thank you for reporting on that. I was thinking more and more after last Monday show when I covered this story, and it just becomes deeper and more complicated, and interests run into other interests. It creates a lot of drama. I was thinking this could be made into a really good play or movie if we had the right cast. I think I would want you, Bill, probably to play the part of Stuart Adams.
I would make a great Stuart Adams. Yeah, it would.
I think you have the depth of character to portray that.
I think I can pull it off. Is there a lot of depth to his character?
Absolutely. I'm going to write it that way.
Okay, well, good. At least you'll
nobody wants to watch, a movie filled with characters with no depth. Otherwise, they would just go and see a DC movie, right?
Yeah. Well, yes, true. What do they say? They say something like when they talk about a historical backtext, a backdrop, but for which it's an embellished story based on.
I think that's called National Geographic.
Okay, there you go.
Or the History Channel for sure.
Well, anyway, so there's that. So lots of stuff going on. I'm trying
By
to
the way, if any of you don't watch Mormonism After Dark on Friday nights, this is an example of what it is you're missing.
This is it.
I hope this is a good advertisement.
Yeah. So folks, just FYI, I did open up the call lines. So 662-667-6667 if you want to call in tonight. If there's anything that we're chatting about that seems interesting, or if you've got some brazen new path that's going to just enlighten our whole audience and steal the show, we'd love to hear from you that way as well. And then I'll also put in the live chat a way to get into the studio also. I'll show you one other little thing here that I thought was interesting.
You found this today, didn't you?
This was, I just saw as we were talking about,
what the hell are we going to do?
Right. I thought this was
talking about that.
So there's this article in the Deseret News. It says the landmark Latter-day Saint Washington Chapel may be sold to a DC developer. There are snags. Now this, I didn't know this, and I don't think you knew this either. I'm going to ask you though. Did you know there was a chapel in Washington, DC that was built to look like the future Washington Temple? It was built to look a certain way, and the Washington Temple ends up having the exact similar design. This chapel had an angel Moroni at the top of it. It says right here at the bottom left, the only meeting house to ever have an angel Moroni statue may become an apartment building. A small determined group wants to stop it. So church owned a chapel, church sold it. It got sold a few other times, and now a developer wants to turn it into an apartment complex, and the church and others are asking that it maintain its look so as to maintain that history. But the angel Moroni is no longer on top of it as far as I know. Now, what I thought was interesting is this little blurb here in the middle that I've got. You talk about discernment and seeing around corners. This is one more instance of church leaders just screwing the pooch. But the church sold the beloved Washington Chapel. If it was that beloved, would you have sold it? Number one, the church sold the beloved.
They don't have to sell it. I mean, let's start there, okay?
No,
it's not like the Reorganites and the Kirtland Temple where they had to give it up
to maintain some sort of financial
solvency.
Totally. Sold the beloved.
Actually, I think it was in order. It is solvency, but it was in order to pay out the pensions of their employees, which they did not have the assets to do.
No, so
at least that's what I heard.
They did, but they sold them to make sure that they could cross their T's and dot their I's there. So the church sold the beloved Washington Chapel to Columbia Road Recording Studios.
Yay.
$300,000. Okay, so be it. That's great. In an odd twist, Columbia Road Recording Studios resold the chapel later that same day for just under $500,000 to the Unification Church, popularly, they say, but crassly, and I say, well, whatever, known then as the Moonies. That's sort of a way to get a dig at people who call the LDS Church the Mormons, because we shouldn't disrespect the Moonies by calling them that. We should call them by their proper and full name the Unification Church. But
So this was some time ago.
this
When was
back,
this?
this was like back in the
70s,
80s or 90s or something. But
Okay. Because I'm looking at these prices and I'm looking at this and it wasn't making sense.
no,
But what happened is they turned around and Columbia Road, well, they made over a 50% profit, didn't they?
Oh, no, not quite. They made 175,000 on top of the 300.
Right, and 50%.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. 150.
Aha!
Right.
I won the math challenge this time.
So just to note, I mean, the church sells it to some recording studio who behind the scenes had been working in some way to go, hey, Moonies, I'm going to come into possession of this chapel that the LDS church won't sell you, for which you're willing to pay a hell of a lot more money. I'll just be the middleman because I'll be happy to sell it. I don't have any stipulation on how I move this thing. And had the church either just sold it to them, or if they had a reason for not wanting to, then it seems like then you just would stipulate that the next buyer couldn't do that either.
Yeah. This is what I think is that if the church had known about the Moonies and their covetousness over this building, then they would have put it in the contract that it can't be resold at any point to the Moonies, at least within, 100 years or something like that.
Yeah.
The fact that this happened
Same
suggests
day.
strongly to me they had no idea that the Moonies were in the market for this building, which means I sure hope somebody got fired over this.
Same day, Columbia Road. They left the closing of buying the thing and went down the hallway and sat down for the closing of the sale to the Moonies and made 100. Imagine half a day just signing some paperwork, and you
A
make
lot of paperwork.
and you make 100. Well, I don't know. Of course, it's not 2025, but I did my closing recently in like 8 minutes.
I'm thinking at least 10 for this.
Probably. But $175,000 isn't bad for a half day's work.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. No, I did not know that story.
It's
But
today.
with stories like this, it really is a miracle that the church has so much money now.
It seems like they don't always have the brightest people in positions and in moments where it would be really handy to have
have somebody who knew what the hell they were doing.
To have a prophet, seer, and revelator upon the earth. And not only that, maybe even 15 of them.
I was just talking about somebody who knows how to value a building,
Or to market it.
Yes.
The Moonies were out
He
there.
knows what they're doing. It was like, I think it was Harold B. Lee who said, to be faithful is good, but to be faithful and competent is better.
Do they really want that?
I think they would like to have people who are competent at their jobs.
Competent
in the church,
people,
especially.
Competent people can usually figure out reason and logical things, and that may not be in their best interest.
Well, I think I have the quote right anyway.
Yeah, you nailed it. What else are you thinking about?
I want to talk about the fact that when I was on my mission, how many out there served a mission? Raise your hands. It's quite a few of you. And here's the deal. When I was on my mission, I was told, we all know that missionaries can't go swimming. We know that.
Satan owns
the day before you're set apart. I'm sorry, what, Bill?
Satan owns the waters. You can't be out there.
Yeah, except for the baptism, which has to be complete immersion in a strange coincidence. But the day before you go on your mission, you can go swimming. The day after you get back from your mission, yes, what?
Hold on. Oh, you just said something, I think, profound, and then you moved on. So first off, we baptize people by full immersion.
Yes.
Again, early church
will have complete power over them, and not even one hair of their head shall be left out of his power.
So Satan owns the waters. We can't go on the waters, but we need to do baptism by full immersion. And in the early church, it was done in the streams and rivers and lakes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. And in living water, I think it's the D.K. that requires living water, which is understood to mean running water.
If you've seen the Great Lakes, I don't know, but things are barely living in those.
It's because it's not running.
The Cuyahoga River caught on fire, for instance. Yeah.
Was it running at the time?
I don't know. The Cuyahoga River, it was running, but, it had a lot of things in it that it was flammable.
You used to live in such an interesting area of the country.
That's a shithole, really.
Dan Vogel lives in Ohio, doesn't he?
He'll probably tell you there are parts of Ohio that, just like Michigan and Indiana, that are a shithole. There's lots of great places too, lots of pretty places, but there's a few shitholes in those 3 states as well.
And you've lived in all of them.
I've lived in one of them, and I've been to all.
Okay, so the deal is that Satan, yes, but as you may know, the church is going through the Doctrine and Covenants and church history this year for Come Follow Me, and the good apologists at really, I think, the preeminent apologetic website is Scripture Central. It was, I believe, started up with or by Jack Welch, who had originally started Farms. And they're very slick. They're very polished. I'd say this is Farms maybe 5.0 at this point. But they are, of course, going along, and they are having authorities write lessons on the different passages in the Doctrine and Covenants and giving some church history background to explain them. So this is what it came up with for a recent week. Oh, Dan's in a really nice suburb of Columbus. That's the capital, right?
That's the capital of Ohio. It's a city in similar size. And there's a difference, but similar size to, say, Cleveland. But I think Columbus is in a little better shape.
So at Scripture Central, they're going to totally turn this backward now, just so you know, okay? And who's going to do it? Stephen Harper. Let me see if we've got this. That's yours, isn't it?
That's mine, but the other one next to it is, you can pull that one up. Do you know what slide number it is?
No, I don't.
Okay, that one's mine.
We've got so many slides here, and they're completely out of order.
So I've got all the stuff from Sunstone.
There's Randall Bell pointing at my friend Claude Rains.
I don't know what. Maybe it's down here. No.
What is it? What were you looking for? I can't remember now.
What are you wanting to show?
I tell you what. Here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the Google Slides over here. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I'll be able to look at them here.
You do that.
I'm doing it.
Excellent.
Okay, so it's getting really, really close now.
It takes a moment to process, folks. So
it does.
Still.
Number 10.
Number 10. Yeah, let me put this up and see if this is it.
Oops. This is live TV, everybody.
Right here?
Yeah. So you see Doctrine and Covenants Central. It's Scripture Central. It's just the Doctrine and Covenants, right?
They have their every book of Scripture has its own brand. So you have Book of Mormon Central, Doctrine and Covenants Central.
Yes. And the parent company is Scripture Central.
Yeah.
So look who wrote this. Bill, you recognize the name?
Stephen Harper. He is our believing expert on the first vision. He's in
the church historian's office.
He is who I heard coin the phrase, "The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there."
And I know you meant quote the phrase as opposed to coining it.
Yes, he within LDS.
Sorry, it's the lawyer in me.
You're right.
I'm holding a coin. Technically a medallion.
Within LDS circles, he's the one who made that quote reverberate through the hallways.
Yes, it did. Much to our delight. So here's the thing. The main point of this entire section is to say, forget what the language of this appears to say. Satan does not rule the waters. I mean, come on, it's Satan. God rules the waters because, hello, God, omnipotent. This is the first thing he writes. Can you read that first paragraph, Bill?
Yeah, the interpretation history of section 61 is a good example of what happens when Scripture is not read in context and when it is too quickly applied universally instead of limited to the situation it was originally about. It does not say that Satan controls the water. Okay.
So this is hysterical to me. These are two different sections. It's a longer article. You can read the whole thing yourself if you're of a mind to, and I encourage it. So here's the thing. I thought that when we read the Doctrine and Covenants, especially, we were encouraged to take these commandments and revelations that were given to other people in another time and apply them to ourselves today. In fact, I was told on more than one occasion that I was supposed to take my name and substitute it in the revelations for the name to the person that it was actually given to give it specific application in my life. That's what I recall being told about the Doctrine and Covenants. Now, Stephen Harper saying, whoa, 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 we don't want any of that specific application here. Okay. Instead, we want to make it as, general to specific. Yeah, he's saying that specific is good. Forget everything I said. Specific is good. It's the same thing. But he wants it to be specific here, okay? Because what it seems to say is that Satan has control over the waters. And on the basis of that, missionaries don't go swimming, right? Missionaries do not go swimming on the basis of that. And if people want to say it's something else, that's fine. But when I was on my mission, everybody knew. And we talked about it, that this is why we didn't go swimming. And in Japan, there were questions about it because going to the bathhouse, to do baptisms, this is when nobody else is there and early in the morning. And is that getting too close to swimming? And is that a problem? And all these things. So, but now the church, at least through the apologists here and through Stephen Harper, who's a church historian, they're backing off of that application and trying to say, no, that's not true. It was just the Missouri River at this time because it had big old trees that were floating down it and capsizing canoes.
What that means, though, then, is that LDS leaders, prophets, seers, and revelators who see around corners misunderstood Scripture, for which it is one of their, it's one of the very purposes they have, is to be the correct interpreters of Scripture, and they're the ones who gave us a incorrect interpretation over decades, if not centuries.
Yeah. By the way, on that thing where I got turned around, I think everything that I related was true, right? We are supposed to make these things specific to ourselves. So all of that was correct. I was just flipping it and thinking it said the opposite, to try and make a point that wasn't there. Okay. So on the right side, that full paragraph that starts with close reading, it's going to say the same thing, but in a little more detail, because we can't have Satan being in charge of the waters. I'm surprised we could have him being in charge of the Missouri River. What was that river you said caught on fire?
That was the Cuyahoga River.
Okay, that's the river that Satan's in charge of. Any river that catches on fire.
Yeah, the fishing wasn't very good at the time in the Cuyahoga River. Not a lot of yellow perch and walleye were they catching in fossil fuel filled river of Cuyahoga. Yeah, that's right.
Close reading. Oh, were you going to read this?
I can. What part am I reading here? The Missouri
with close reading.
Oh, close reading of section 61 shows that the Lord controls the waters, not Satan. That is true for dry land as well. God blessed the waters during the creation process. He later cursed them. See Revelation 8 through 11. The day will come when only the honest-hearted will be able to safely travel to Zion by water.
Okay, hang on a second. Is Stephen Harper really saying, in order to make this work, that the day is still going to come when only the honest-hearted will be able to travel to Zion by water? Because I think that's what he's trying to say.
Folks like Samuel Brannan, who traveled the water to Zion in California.
Oh, that was the big sea waters.
Yeah. Well, it is weird, right? Like, people are going to be able to travel the waters pretty much as long as people are upon planet Earth.
Yeah, but it's sometime in the future, maybe when there's going to be a Zion there, because we're still talking about the Missouri River, aren't we? And doesn't that go to Missouri, or at least past it?
It must be due to like future pirates. I am the captain now.
The Missouri Pirates, yes. What's the baseball team? There's a Pirates baseball team.
The Pittsburgh Pirates. That's
the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's who's going to be the problem on the Missouri River in the future. The day will come when only the honest-hearted will be able to safely travel to Zion by water. Until then, anybody can go, I guess. So, Bill, can you finish this?
Yes. So, well, first I'll reread that. The day will come when only the honest-hearted will be able to safely travel to Zion by water. That's ridiculous. All right. The Lord explains that after the fall, he cursed the land for Adam's sake. But in the latter days, he blessed it to be fertile for the saints' sake. The Lord commands the elders to warn the other saints not to travel on the dangerous Missouri River without faith?
Because the adversary has control of it. Jeez.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, look
Yes.
below.
I was getting ready to tell you.
I
Surprise.
think there's been a Lauren Matthias sighting.
Look at this.
We have been treading water here for exactly half an hour, and she's here in half an hour. This is incredible.
Let me take the other things off the screen. Give us just a second, Lauren. We'll bring you on here. We'll take that off. Anything else you want to say about this little clip here?
No, not at all. Not with Lauren in the green room.
That's just ridiculous. The travel the waters in safety. Talking about traveling in safety. Hopefully, Lauren, you're doing good. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here. I apologize. I would have been here a little bit earlier. I got the wrong link. You guys sent me the wrong link for an ending. And then I finally came to chat and I saw that you guys shared it. So I jumped on.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, that's so good. I'm glad you did. I blame Bill, of course.
Yeah. I'm a troubleshooter. So it's okay. I got it figured out.
Well, I didn't say any details about what happened. Okay. So just so you know, okay. I expressed doubt that you'd be able to be here.
Yeah,
before
I'm
the
glad
show.
too. Thank you. I apologize that I'm late. Yes, but I did have there was a little bit of an emergency. Everything should be good to go.
Well, that is so great. Now, I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. We were in a different slideshow, so I'm going to go to the important slideshow now. Let me see here. And if you were not here yet, and if we were doing this cold open, this is what we would be doing. So let me see, share screen. And hopefully
It'll process for a second and come up. There we are.
Will it really?
There, yeah, you've got it there.
Okay, so if I do, don't hurt me. Yes. Okay, drum roll, please.
Oh, sorry, I was clicking. Go ahead. You're good.
Okay. Lauren, we're so glad you're here. All of a sudden, the number of people viewing is increasing.
Oh, is it? I can't see the number, by the way.
The last 30 minutes, I got to say, after I said you're not going to be here tonight. Lauren Matthias, Hidden True Crime, is going to be with us tonight. This would be the cold open. And then I would say something like, Lauren Matthias has worked as a reporter and anchor for ABC, NBC, and Fox News in East Idaho, Boise, Idaho, and Salt Lake City, Utah. She spent a decade reporting on a diverse range of topics, from high-profile crimes to presidential visits. Most recently, she reported for Salt Lake City's ABC affiliate, News 4 Utah in southern Utah. In 2015, she received the Idaho State Broadcasters Association Best Reporter Award, in addition to receiving the Best Report of the Year in 2015, based upon a short documentary she did on LGBTQ rights. She left the reporting world to stay home with her son and to produce and edit the Hidden True Crime podcast and Hidden True Crime YouTube channel. She is also the author of the book, Escaping Emotional Abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Mormonism Live, Lauren Matthias.
Hi, that was such a kind opening. That was such a kind, thank you.
I'm glad I got to use it.
Me too.
Somebody's already saying that you're the best.
Oh, thank you. You're the best, Susie Catherine.
Well, I know that you do Hidden True Crime podcast, and I don't think you need a whole lot of introduction. But can you tell me something? Why Hidden True Crime? Why the name?
Why the name? That was like we didn't have much of a business plan, but we did have that down. That was the only thing we had down when we started. So I'm glad you asked. Hidden True Crime, we wanted to delve into the hidden motives of crime. We call the average, the non-hidden motives, we call them the Dateline 2020 motives. That's usually like money, sex, power, things like that, lust. And then there are the hidden motives of the crimes that aren't as often talked about. What made a criminal go down this path? What was his upbringing like, or her? A lot of female criminals we cover. What is it that created this environment for someone to do such evil act? And we don't necessarily believe that the person is evil, but the act, what creates the criminal? Is there attachment? Is there something in their upbringing? The psychological motives, I guess you could say. So the hidden motives.
Would you
What
say that
lies
that's what
hidden?
I'm sorry, I was going to ask if you think that's what makes your podcast different from the other true crime podcasts. There are a number out there, aren't there?
There are a number out there. And yes, I do believe it's what makes our podcast really different. And we're proud of that. I think that there are a lot of podcasts that are important podcasts that talk about crime, but we try to delve deeper and further to understand. And as my husband, John, who's a criminal psychologist, says, a better understanding of crime is a better understanding of ourselves. So there's actually oftentimes self-reflection that happens in our podcast. How can we better the world? How can we better ourselves? How can we stop these type of things from happening? What are the warning signs? So a lot of people will also say, gosh, I didn't know I could listen to a story about crime, but yet come away inspired. But we try to uplift and bring purpose to the discussion of crime and criminals.
Do you think that crime, especially violent crime in the United States, is going up dramatically?
Yeah, but I mean, dramatically, I was about to say yes, but dramatically, here's the thing about crime, and this is why I think it's important to talk about. Crime has been here since the beginning of time. As long as humans have existed, so has crime. Some of the first stories in the Bible are crime. So this idea that crime goes up dramatically, yeah, crime does go up. But I think to acknowledge that crime affects so many, I think sometimes that's the other thing too. Some people say, oh, I don't like crime, I stay away from crime, as in it doesn't affect them, but crime affects everyone. And so often the families we cover that are victims or survivors of crime, they didn't ever expect this to happen in their lives or in their families. And one thing that we also, every time there's a crime or a mystery evolving in investigation, people will say, well, the news is lying because it's not my neighbor. There's no way. And then it ends up being their neighbor. The evidence shows that actually, no, this person you thought you knew, you didn't. Chad Daybell is a great example of that. Everyone, defended him throughout, until children were found in his yard. So I know that was a roundabout way to answer your question, whether or not crime is drastically increasing. There are times in history where crime is higher, and there are times when crime is lower and we feel safer. And I think that hate crimes are increasing right now. I think that's certainly happening. Crimes against people that are being dehumanized is happening. But crime in general, I think we have to be really honest and say it's as long as humans will be here, crime will be here.
So it is going up.
I mean, as the population rises, I guess it is. But I would say hate crimes against people and dehumanizing. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah.
All right. But how about Mormon crime?
That's been an interesting aspect. We did not set out on our podcast to talk about so many LDS connected crimes. That was not, we might have had our name solidified, we did not think that a lot of our angle would be covering Mormons, because I didn't suspect that so many LDS people would be creating content, as I say. But it has been shocking for me to see how many LDS people have committed crime in the last 5 years. So that, that's been interesting. And I've learned a lot.
What do you attribute that to?
So I have something to say. I'm choosing my words wisely here. I do attribute it to something. Not for every crime. So I'm trying to decide how to I'm live. So let me try to be careful here. Not every crime. So I'm talking in generalization. But one thing that I've noticed with a lot of the LDS center crimes is a lot of them can be equated to a similar thing that creates terrorism. And terrorism is essentially a combination of politics and religion combining, a strong belief in something as well as strong political beliefs. And I will use Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt as an example of that, and Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow as an example of that. There are strong, extreme political beliefs and strong, extreme religious beliefs. And together those collided in both of those cases. In other cases, like James Craig that I just covered, that's the LDS dentist in Colorado who shockingly
Poisoned his wife by degrees.
yeah, just the most evil, just one of the most evil acts of murdering his wife of 23 years, the mother to his 6 children. And he was elders quorum president. He and a dentist. I don't equate that to terrorism, but I do equate that to just that one. I would say vanity and likely a personality disorder. These are the hidden motives, and just like a psychopath, a psychopathy. And I think that it's easy for people to get swept up in those things too, likely because of the internet. He was a serial cheater. He fantasized about a different life and being understood, and that was made more easy, of course, for him through the internet. But so that is one thing, though, that I think I have seen in a lot of crimes. And when I brought up the increase in hate crimes, I think there's an element of terrorism, and that also are those that are LDS are not immune to that.
You said that from your coverage of the Mormon related murders, and before I get to that, I'm going to finish the question, then I'll come back to it. Okay. You said, I've learned a lot. And then I went off on this specific thing. I want to come back to the I've learned a lot thing. But first, it came as a modest surprise to me that you yourself are Mormon, that you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I suppose the only reason it came as a surprise is that you craft your reporting such that you don't talk about that very much. You don't lead with that. Is that right?
That's right. I will share about when I'm discussing LDS crimes or an LDS specific theme to an LDS crime, because not every, James Craig didn't kill his wife because of his belief system. We can talk about LDS culture all we want when it comes to that crime, but it wasn't a belief system like, let's say, Lori and Chad Daybell or Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt as much, right? So when we're talking about these elements of belief when it comes to the LDS faith, I will always be honest and share my LDS background, because I think that's fair, because people want to know how I know something, or maybe I should talk to an expert, and I'm like, well, and so I'll share that because I think it's a fair journalistic thing to say, but I will say that I grew up LDS, or I have an LDS background, or this is something I understand. I am a returned missionary. I served in Kirtland. And then I also, not only did I serve in Kirtland, which is a big part of LDS history, and I studied a lot of the LDS history there, then I also was a reporter in Colorado City and Hilldale, where Warren Jeffs lived. And I have many FLDS friends. So I do have a wide range of, but that's as far as I go. I don't have an agenda when it comes to convincing people whether the LDS Church is good or bad. And I get a lot of angry listeners writing reviews, and some people say I'm too hard on the LDS Church. I'm hurting the LDS Church, and they're disgusted with me, and and I'm an ex-LDS member, and I'm trying to hurt the church. And then other people will share that I'm not being hard enough on the church, and that I'm an apologist, and that sometimes those reviews will come within 24 hours of each other. So at that moment, I think, maybe I'm doing a good job being neutral when I get those reviews, because I actually genuinely want to have a safe space where those that are LDS and those that are ex-LDS, because I respect both groups so much, that they can listen and know that I don't have an agenda. We're there to talk about crime, the elements of crime, and the hidden motives, wherever that leads. And what I do believe in is evidence, and we will follow that evidence wherever it goes, whether I like it or not, as someone that is LDS. So if that evidence is, abuse in the LDS church and up to the LDS hierarchy, we're going there. So I follow the evidence.
Lauren, when
That's
was
my
the-
agenda.
Oh, excuse me. When was the time that you most had that experience of following the evidence in spite of the fact you didn't like where it was leading?
So someone mentioned my Mormon Stories interview, and I talk a little bit about that in the second part of that interview, but let's talk about it here. I think that the abuse that I've been seeing in the LDS church has made me very sad and uncomfortable. I put my emotions aside when reporting on it, but here we are. This is a channel where I can talk about that. People often wonder how it affects me. It certainly affects me. I don't show that. Again, my agenda is evidence. And I think when I said I've learned a lot, we'll combine your other question. What have I learned? I did not know before I started reporting on Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. I didn't know about the prepping community. I didn't know about Julie Rowe. I didn't know about the energy healing that was happening with a big LDS slant. I didn't know about this website called A Vow. I didn't know about Chad Daybell's books. I didn't know this stuff.
Tom Harrison's book.
I didn't know about Tom Harrison's book, Visions of Glory. I didn't know about these conferences, which I've now attended in full for days because, like I said, I follow the evidence. And when I feel like I need to learn something, I'm going to go learn it. So I spent 3 days at a Firm Expo conference.
Firm Expo. Now, what is
pardon?
that? What is Firm Expo?
So the Firm Expo, Rod Meldrum runs that. He used to be friends with Mike and Nancy James, and Mike and Nancy James ran the Preparing a People conference. Preparing a People conference is now rebranded since Chad Daybell. They're now LDS Media. I'm sure you've heard of them. So LDS Media is actually technically Preparing a People, and that is where Chad Daybell got his platform and would preach and teach. Rod Meldrum was a big part of that. Tim Ballard was a big part of that. Hannah Stoddard, the Joseph Smith Foundation, is a big part of that. Like the things I've learned when you say I did not know, I knew more about maybe LDS history and polygamy than I knew about some of the more extreme beliefs. I'm gonna say what it is: extreme beliefs in the LDS faith happening right now, and that's been startling to me. And what I've uncovered and continue to uncover is how widespread these beliefs are. And in the LDS church, like not just like, people want to say this is different. No, this is the LDS faith and how it's spreading and how far spread it is. And literally Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, like I was saying this and I was screaming, and then Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke happened. And it's like an exact copycat crime. Like it's a copycat to Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. Like those children are lucky to be alive. And, it's happening again and again, and it's going to happen again. And the abuse that is happening and the idea that children can be evil and be zombies, and that this second coming is on its way, and these are the gatherers, and there's going to be a call out. That was, this A Vow website is a big part of this, spreading these beliefs. And you've got, like, honestly, my backstory. So I'm saying all this and I'm all over the place, but my backstory, I spent a very, very long time, weeks, months on a backstory for Chad and Lori Daybell that I actually hope that those are LDS listen, because I evolved the entire story around this belief system, because I feel like when Dateline or 2020 or when people are covering the story, that's not what they do. And it was so important for me to wrap this entire story around. No, the reason this has happened, not once now, but twice, is because of this belief system. And here are all the players, from Mike Stroud to Tom Harrison to Chad Daybell to Tim Ballard to, this is spreading and this is big. And these people aren't all murdering that are attending the Firm Expo. In fact, I met some wonderful people that I now consider friends that had booths there, and they shared, but this is a very slippery slope. And I would say the one thing that they all have in common, because there's actually quite a variety of beliefs out there. But the one thing that's in common, I would say, is actually extreme. And when I say extreme, I mean extreme. I'm not getting political here, but extreme political beliefs. That's the thing that ties everything together. So some people believe in portals. Some people don't. Some people believe Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, and some people are, doing that thing where they're like, he didn't. Some people believe in Denver Snuffer and seeing your own vision of Christ. Some people don't. Some people believe, there's a variety of beliefs at these conferences. There really are. Some people believe in past lives, or multiple probations. Other people don't. The one thing that is the same at this conference that everyone holds is an extreme political belief, an ideology. So let's even move it to an ideology that's very extreme, and then they're mixing religion with it. And it is a recipe for disaster, and that's where terrorism comes in.
I wanted to ask you to jump in on that. RFM was asking if you thought murder, homicide, violence was going up in America. And my question is whether it's going up in Mormonism, or let me say it this way. You cover it. We cover it too in various places. It seems to me like there's a lot of Mormon crime. And maybe it's because we're in this arena and we're sort of looking for it. And if it happens, we're going to talk about it. And let's be honest, crime happens in every city. And maybe Mormonism is no different. And then the other side of me wonders, in a religion that has Danites and whistling whittlers and blood atonement and, a strengthening church members committee and all the different kinds of things that happen in our history. You mentioned a bunch, but there were some murder homicides where the husband kills the children and the wife and then takes his own life. This was in like 2023. I think the one family is maybe the Haight family, Haight.
Yes.
And there's been several of those. I think there were 2 or 3 of them in just that 1 year alone. You got Desnat who sits and talks, sits in the background and wants violence upon progressive Mormons and ex-Mormons. I'm just curious if this religion creates a space where people might be more prone to being gullible and more prone to following absurd ideas, and hence someone's unhealthiness can get louder than it could in maybe standard society.
Yeah, I completely agree with the last thing you said, Bill, that yes, I think those that are gullible also manipulated by criminals too, both being victims and criminals. It's hardy for both. So I think the one reason that I maybe beat around the bush with like nailing the answer to your question, like are Mormon crimes increasing, is because I haven't done the research, right? I haven't done the testing and the statistics to actually find out if that's true. Does it feel like it to me? Yes. And those are some of why. That's some of why. But like I said, I haven't done the research and the testing and the stats. I feel like at the same time, I think you make a good point too. There have always been some serious crimes with those that are LDS. I'm actually losing his name right now, but there's a Kirtland murder. I just forgot his name. Like on my mission, we learned about the false prophet in Kirtland. I served in Kirtland. And then I think that had Elizabeth Smart's Kate crime happened when the internet and crime channels and sleuths were, what if it was happened today? I think it would have played out a lot differently too, because here's a false prophet that was actually really inspired by Avram Gileadi, and you know what I mean? And it fits into this whole arena too. So there have been crimes happening that maybe we never really put the stamp on, of like Mormon crime, another Mormon crime, another Mormon crime. And Elizabeth Smart was certainly a victim, but she was also kidnapped by someone who was a false prophet. So
you're thinking of Lundgren and Kirtland, right? Lundgren in the 80s.
Lundgren, thank you, Bill. Yes, Lundgren was the Kirtland false prophet, and that was really well known and horrific. And it was a cult killing, and he killed multiple people, whole family in Kirtland, and that had under the guise
of a tiny
of
town, right?
What? What'd you say?
Tiny town, right?
Kirtland, Ohio is.
I've never been there.
Tiny town, right? So having a crime in Kirtland like that, is horrendous. And then you have the recent, I just forgot his name. Is it Bates? The new Colorado City, Hilldale. Forgive me, guys. It's been along the, I had this little medical emergency before I showed up. You guys,
I didn't even say that much, just so you
I
know.
know. So okay,
Anything you
thank you.
say is
Yeah.
on you from this point forward.
Okay, yeah. But so I'm being a little forgetful because I was a little frazzled before I jumped on. But the gentleman, yeah, the LeBarons, Hoffman,
Not
but
Warren
who
Jeffs.
the recent I just did an interview about it on my channel, the recent Warren Jeffs sort of repeat. Let me Google. Hold on. And his trial was just barely in Arizona with he was trafficking FLDS women.
Was he a deputy?
The thing I've got to go on, you can look that up, Lauren, but the thing
Okay.
that I go on is whenever something horrific happens in Utah, some weird manipulation, abuse, violence, murder, rape, child abuse, molestation, whatever it is, whenever it happens in Utah, I go, watch, it's going to turn out to be a Mormon. And the population, we say, is 50-50 essentially. So half the time I should be wrong, but my anecdotal evidence is that about 95% of the time, when something horrific happens in the state of Utah and I go, let's wait and see what happens here, but I bet that's a Mormon, it ends up being a Latter-day Saint or some faction of Mormonism that person comes from.
Yes, Sam Bateman. Everyone's telling me, yes, Sam Bateman. And yeah, Sam Bateman, that's a recent one. I agree, Bill. I agree. And so I think there's two elements here. I do think crime is increasing among my LDS brothers and sisters. At the same time, I think that maybe we also haven't tackled it head on or looked at it so clearly. And the internet and the crime community today has allowed us, and maybe me even more so, to do that. So I think there are two elements there that make it feel like there is a lot more. But at the same time, when you bring up the murder suicides of the families that you mentioned, and there's multiple ones, as well as, you know, James Craig and others, I do think that crime in general, and violent crime, you know, there's white collar crime, and you're right, and then there's just violent crime like first degree murder. That's what we're talking about, that I'm seeing an increase. It used to be that, you know, you met someone in your ward that was guilty of a white collar crime or whatever, you know, or they were taking advantage of someone financially in the ward. And now we're talking, you know, murder, family members. And I think that's what's maybe shocked me in the last 5-ish years of seeing over and over again that, you know, and you know, and people they'll say, like, why do you only cover LDS crimes? I'm like, I never intended to do that. And we don't, but they need to stop committing crime so that I don't have to cover them anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
So, Lauren, what is this strange obsession you have with murder?
Wouldn't you like to know? No.
It seems to be very popular. I mean, I kind of did a career that was very much involved in it, but
yeah, no, I've always been fascinated with crime since I was a little girl. I was very fearful. Very fearful. I thought something bad was going to happen. I would stay up at night in just absolute panic. I would try to figure out how I was going to hide if a kidnapper would come in my room or someone was going to murder my family. And this is just me as a child. And I would watch this show called Rescue 911, where it talked about, you know, luckily people on that show were rescued, hence Rescue 911, but it was very scary. You know, a murder comes into your house and what are you going to do? I was in the era of McGruff the crime dog, and all these kids are getting kidnapped and the milk cartons. And so I was a very, very fearful child. But looking back on that severe fear I had, and I really relied on the Holy Ghost then, by the way, too. Like the Holy Ghost, when I got the Holy Ghost at 8, I thought it was like purely there to protect me. And I would think that the Holy Ghost was going to let me know if a kidnapper is coming. And I would kind of be like, I'd jump off my bike if I felt scared and think that the Holy Ghost is telling me to jump on my bike or run home or hide under your bed. Like that was what the Holy Ghost was to me, like to protect me. So when I look back at this though, as an adult and process that fear I had, I think that it was a fear of death and this idea that God is safe, God is good, God gave me comfort. In fact, it really did. Like, again, the Holy Ghost gave me this comfort and God gave me this safety and this love and like everything's okay. But the honest truth is everything else about life is actually no, like we're dust, we die, there's evil. Someone could just come in your house and kill you. And it's not so, you know, it's not all flowers and rainbows. And I think it was in many ways a way that I processed those existential questions about life was through crime. And as I got older, of course, I reported on it a lot. And I think that what I always wondered is why, as someone that's never wanted to kill anybody ever, or even like had the thought,
Not
um,
even Jacob Hansen,
no one, no one.
because I've thought about that a few
It's never even occurred to, and you know what's so funny is they actually have a statistic that they're like that like a lot of the like population maybe allegedly could like think about it. Like never. It's never even, the fact that like someone could want to hurt another person, like
Mhm.
the psychology of that, I think is just it's about humanity to me. It's like, why? So it's not like that. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and and then wait for this, get your morbid curiosity ready for this, and then that happened. I don't, I'm not that person. I don't want to see the autopsy photos. I've had to see plenty in a courtroom, but if someone's like, you want to see this? No, I don't. Um, for me, it's about being human in the why and understanding humanity and this world we live in. And again, a better understanding of crime is a better understanding of ourselves. And I don't want to put anyone down that does have that morbid curiosity, by the way. I didn't mean to say that either. Like a lot of people do. And that's perfectly, it's not
You have
unhealthy
a lot of
for those
viewers
that
with
have it,
morbid curiosity.
but it's not mine as much. I mean, you could say I have a morbid curiosity because I want to understand the psychology of a criminal.
Mhm.
Everybody has their different thing that they're really intrigued by. I do. And when it came to the Daybell case that I was, you could say obsessed with, understanding everything I could about it for over 6 years. That was a deep curiosity into how could this beautiful woman that looks like every childhood friend's mom I ever had, and this man that is, an LDS author whose books used to be sold in Deseret Book. I was a big reader of Gerald Lund growing up. Like this guy who I could have like read as a kid. I didn't know who he was until there were 2 children missing. How could this have happened? And that set me on this sort of quest for 6 years. Like I say I didn't go down a rabbit hole. It was much more than that. And I think it's the understanding human beings, like understanding why. How could some people be born into a loving family and be healthy and love and want to treat people with kindness and goodness? What creates violence then? And humans are complex and criminals are complex. So often criminals love people. They have a mother, they have a father, they all have children. They'll do good in this world, and then they'll do this horrendous act. So what is it? Like, and they'll do something that nobody ever expects. What creates violence? And so that was a very long-winded question as to why I'm intrigued by crime, but um, I always have been and always will.
So, thank you for the answer to that, by the way. I found it very interesting. What do you think? I know the focus of your whole program, your raison d'etre, is to find out motives and understanding what's behind the commission of crimes. What in the 6 years that you've done the rabbit hole, even greater than a rabbit hole on Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, what do you think that you've understood about why they did what they did?
Belief is powerful. Magical thinking is powerful. I think it goes back to terrorism again. When you partner extreme political beliefs with extreme religious beliefs, and when you're so certain about something that you can't see the forest from the trees, I'm going to just keep going. There are a lot of things. There's not one answer here. I'm going to tell you everything I've learned. When you are so certain, when you know something is so true that no one can convince you otherwise, when you get to a fuzzy gray area between extreme religious beliefs and delusion. What's the difference? What's the difference between a religious belief and a delusion? That's a question I haven't answered yet. when you get to maybe childhood abuse and personality disorders and thinking in a way that might be slightly different than a healthier human being, when you have an ego that's so strong, when you have childhood wounds, when you have a fantasy that's so encompassing and so empowering, when you have death anxiety, when you have anxiety about death that overtakes you and your mortality, that you can equate it to a midlife crisis that's so extreme. When your extreme beliefs are solidified by someone else, validated over and over again, groupthink. When you get into that cult mindset, when ideology overtakes rational, critical thinking, when you care, and then when you care more about yourself and your exaltation than you do the people around you that you're supposed to be caring for, when you surround yourself by only people that think like you, and that's a problem. These echo chambers that are now happening online, where people aren't surrounding themselves anymore with those that think differently, that maybe agreeing to disagree. Let's bring that back. Again, what abuse does to the mind. I do think there was, I'll just say, some abuse of the criminals early on in their lives, or at least one of them. I think denial of mental health. Yeah, a lot of things had to be checked off to create this perfect, horrendous, evil storm.
I think one of the things that surprised everyone so much is that we would typically think that the love of a mother for her child, uh, we think that's the strongest thing in nature. And yet, here we have Lori Vallow, who apparently overrode that natural instinct not once but twice for something else that she thought was more important and was obviously more powerful to her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, the first podcast episode we ever did with my husband, who again is a criminal psychologist, most people, RFM, have your question and your thought, and that is the number one thing we get asked when it comes to the Daybell case. And the very first episode we did in 2020, I said to my husband, like, help me understand this mother, Lori Vallow. And he said, in response, before we understand Lori Vallow, we need to understand Chad Daybell. And we spent the first 5 episodes talking about Chad Daybell. And Chad Daybell, in my opinion, has been a very underrated person in this entire saga. Why would a mother, it's a perfect storm, but why would a mother be willing to kill her 2 children? What had to happen? And while I believe, let's just lay it out, I can diagnose because I'm not a psychologist. I think Lori Vallow is a psychopath, but not all psychopaths necessarily want to hurt people. By the way, some people, it's a personality disorder, like it's being antisocial. Like, not all psychopaths want to be serial killers, although we equate that. Like, some people, just want to try to be a good churchgoer. James Craig is another one I think is a psychopath. But, you take somebody with a personality disorder and an unhealthy person like Lori Vallow, who claims to love her children, and maybe she doesn't fully know what love is. And then you give her the perfect mix of somebody who is validating her and allowing her to believe that she's an exalted being, and who perhaps even requests this of her. And that's why I call it a perfect storm. I'm not blaming one more than the other, but I do believe that oftentimes, I think when it comes to this pair, and I believe the same thing with Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. You can say same here. I believe that Ruby Franke was abusive before she met Jodi. I believe Lori was abusive to her children before she met Chad. But so Chad didn't create it. Jodi Hildebrandt didn't create it, but they certainly enabled it. they allowed them to be who maybe they always were. And there's certainly in these cases two people.
There are a number of things that you said when you were answering the question about this huge rabbit hole in the 6 years that made me want to ask. Yeah, that caught my ear and made me want to follow up with this question. Did that experience affect your faith in any way?
Yes, it did. People ask that all the time. And that's what I won't answer on my own program because that's not the place for it, but it can be here. Yes. I think that the biggest, so let me maybe share where I started. My husband is not LDS. He's never been LDS. He grew up in Chicago. Like, he's not LDS. You know, I always say in Utah, everyone's LDS. You're either Jack, anti-active, like, but you got an opinion on it. You know, Dr. John grew up in Chicago, went to school back east. You know, he just happened to marry a Mormon woman. Not his thing. So I think where I was before I started covering the case with someone that didn't go to church all the time. I didn't believe that I was not going to be with my non-member husband forever. I just sort of went to the beat of my own drum, and for me, my LDS faith was probably agnostic, but a hope and a faith in God, and thinking that was good and Christian. I believed in Christ's message of loving one another. And that's what I felt that the LDS faith was a way that I could worship my love of Christ. So I feel like I need to set the stage with where I was before. I think that's fair to say. And now I wonder if any magical thinking is healthy at all. Because where's the line? And could one unhealthy person take any sort of magical thinking and run with it to a place where they justify murdering children? I mean, that's what happened in this Daybell case. And it's not just those that are LDS. You know, there was a surfing instructor that was a Christian that killed his kids in California. There was a mother in California who did a exorcism on her daughter, her 3-year-old daughter, and killed her daughter Arlie, that aren't LDS. And so, is any magical thinking frightening if in the wrong hands? So I guess as someone that maybe says, I don't know, I don't know, maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't, but I think hope in one is good and believing in Christ is good. I have to now say, I don't know. I don't know. Is silence the only way? Because I might be a healthy person, but I've just seen so many frightening evil acts in not even the name of religion. I don't want to say that, in the name of a belief that these people have held. And so what's the line? And so this idea, I guess you could say, this magical happy fantasy that I had, that hope is good and faith in Christ is good, and I think it can be good for some people. I teach my son about Christ. I was his sunbeam teacher, and I think it gives my little boy a lot of hope in this world. But then I wonder, is that good? And I don't have the answer. I can't. I'm not the person to tell you whether it is or isn't. I remain humble in trying to understand, but it certainly made me question any and all magical thinking. And at what point, is it just bad for any of us if there are people out there that are unhealthy to teach and preach this?
Do you think there might be any truth to the idea that for every few unhealthy people, there's a lot more Mormons who are willing to believe stuff just because they've been primed to believe crazy stuff as a Mormon?
Yeah, I'd say that with any religious people. And I'm being honest, like I'm not trying to excuse. I think LDS people can be very, very global. So I'm not dismissing that, but I see that with a lot of religious people too,
Continuing,
evangelicals. Yeah.
continuing with the evolving of your religious beliefs, excuse me. I can't imagine many careers where you would have the problem of evil thrown in your face day after day after day. God allowing horrible things to happen. And God forbid, even by people who were doing it in the name of God without intervening. Have your feelings about that developed in God's willingness or ability to intervene in our lives?
Um, that's a great question. So I'm thinking about it.
Take your time, really.
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to be honest with my answer, and I'm processing. Because I feel like I should have an answer. I'm gonna have to think about that. I'm trying to decide. I think that's something I thought a lot about as a child. Like listening to the Holy Ghost, right? I sort of told you about my relationship with the
Mhm.
Holy Ghost, like that. So it was sort of like if I listened to the Holy Ghost, I'd be saved, and if I didn't, I wouldn't. That's sort of like God intervening, right? Like that's God's way of protecting me. And so if I was sinning and if I didn't obey him, then would I be protected, and would that be um but I don't know. I think I've just always, and maybe this is why I've been always processing crime though still as a child too. I think I've always understood that it doesn't matter how much God can do to protect you. There are going to be evil people with evil acts that can do evil things. And I think maybe that's like the entire existential question I've had since I was a child is, and maybe where my fascination with crime comes from is at that moment, God can only do so much. And a person with a quest to do evil can accomplish that. I mean, God can't just stop that person from doing it. So maybe I think I've always known that, which is why I was such a fearful child. So I think that maybe I've just that's where I'm a realist, and I never equated, you know, God to intervening like that. I think that I have equated God to intervening more with good acts. Like for example, I was in a very severe car accident when I was a senior in high school, and I didn't think, why did God cause the car accident? But my friend almost died, and she was bleeding on the side of the freeway. We had rolled multiple times, and a doctor had been there and pulled over and helped before the ambulance got there. And so I think I equated good Samaritans to God, but I don't know if I've ever thought God could stop evil acts.
Hmm.
I
Hey,
don't
Bill,
know.
do you remember that conference talk? This has been years ago now. I think it was when I was just starting the RFM thing. And we were doing a conference talk about this guy who had climbed up to the top of the mountain, like it was in the Andes. It was way up there or something. And he had fallen off. And on the way down, he'd broken like every bone in his body. But the miracle was that he didn't die. And I would have said, I'd like my miracle just a little bit earlier, please. And I'd like that miracle so I don't fall off the mountain to start with.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up and see who that
Oh,
is.
you don't actually have to, but it did come to me because I remember we were laughing about that. You know, it is an ill wind indeed that blows no one some good.
I think for magical thinking people, to Lauren's point, I think magical believing people will look for any situation and find some evidence that magic is truly working in the world. And I think it's, you mentioned that all religions do it, Lauren, but I think it's Mormons more than Methodists. I think it's Scientologists more than the Lutherans. I think it's the Jehovah's Witnesses more than the Baptist. I think certain groups are more prone to it. And, when you look at our religion, there's so many instances where you do have to sort of shut off your brain. 2,000 stripling warriors, not a single one dies. Many of them die from blood loss. Nobody gets gangrene. Nobody passes away. There's lots of stories. Christians look at the Bible and there's full of them.
Yeah.
But Mormonism comes along and creates its own modern moment of faith promoting stories that are beyond belief, and then ask you to live in a world where you don't really observe any sort of supernatural God magic happening, but with which you're supposed to put yourself into the mindset that it does regardless.
Yeah. Well, and
Again,
let
so
me
many found
let
lost
me
keys.
be let me clarify too. Like, I am LDS, and I shared what I shared, but like I also want to say, like, I do love sometimes the feeling of magical thinking. I want to say that, like, I don't know if there's a God. I don't know. In fact, honestly, I'm probably leaning more towards atheism these days, but trying not to, because I crave hope and a bit of magical thinking. They say that, like, I want to choose to believe, have faith. Like, I seek that in many ways. And I want my little boy to believe so he can feel safer in this very scary world where his parents cover crime. There's something I want to believe that Christ, is this being that was perfect and loved everyone, and that we can love everyone. That's more difficult for me to do now. And so I think, to your question, when I sing hymns, I like worship. When I sing hymns, it lifts me. When gospel, my family's big in bluegrass music. It's sitting around the campfire and singing gospel songs. I feel this spiritual feeling in me, and I love that. And I don't know why I'm bringing this up. I'm just trying to be humble and say, like, I also agree with you, Bill. And so I think that's my question as to where I am. Should I not be feeling, should I not, is that bad? You know what I mean? I'm not bad. I'm not going to go kill anyone or commit a crime. I think I'm pretty good. But is that, with an unhealthy person, even that, not good? Like, I don't know. Should we only be focusing on science? And I think that's where I am. But I want to. I want to believe. Like, I sometimes just want to just have a magical thinking moment and feel that, and feel hope and peace, and think, what, WWJD. I don't know. It's just me trying to be honest. But I guess that was a bit of a tangent from what you're saying. But yeah, like, yeah, I agree that, and Mormons are very magical thinking prone.
Lead on and we will follow.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I haven't met you personally, Lauren, but I've heard about you from other people. I've had some interactions with you, and a lot of people seem to have a really positive opinion of you, and
Oh.
not just your reporting and your articulateness and your thoroughness and your professionalism, but over and over, I hear people talking about how kind you are and what a sweet person you are. And I don't know if there are comments like that already. I don't have the live chat turned on, but I just want to let you know that, which, of course, makes the question even more interesting. Why is a person like you, why is a girl like you in a place like this reporting on the crime and everything? But you've already answered that. So I want to open this up to other people to let them ask questions of Lauren, because I think this is a wonderful opportunity for our audience to be able to do that. And while we're doing that, by the way, the phone number is 662-667-6667 or 662 Mormons, but we prefer and encourage you to visit the studio through the link that's provided in the live chat, Bill. Yes.
Yep.
So that you can come on the show as well. Enjoy.
That was really kind. Thank you, RFM. I needed that today, so thank you for saying that.
Well, you're very welcome. My gosh. So let me ask you something that doesn't have to do with you right now, okay? Why do you think that so many other people other than you are so fascinated by crime? It's like they can't get enough. Is this healthy?
There are multiple reasons why people are fascinated with crime, for good and for bad. And I think that, like I said, I think the reason I'm fascinated with crime, like I own it, and I don't think that's unhealthy. I don't. I think that it's a good way to process a lot. And my husband, I don't think it's unhealthy. Our first conversation, we were set up, we talked about crime. We talked about some murders, and I said, "Help me understand this." And he goes into these prisons and jails, and you know, assesses the worst of humanity and gives them empathy for a moment, and to listen, and listens fully to them in order to process if they're how high risk they are, the recidivism rate. And that's not unhealthy. He does it day in and day out, and we talk about it day in and day out. I don't think that's unhealthy, especially like I said, if you're I do believe that a better understanding of crime can be a better understanding of yourself. I do think there are some people that can be really unhealthy that listen and are interested in crime, and it might make them feel a little bit better about themselves. So whether that's healthy or not healthy, I don't know. But I've
I may
certainly
be a
met
terrible person, but I'm not out killing people.
Right, right. I've met some unhealthy people that find themselves conspiracy theorists, that a lot of the sleuthing. So let me tell you too, there's also a wide variety of crime channels and what people are intrigued by. So let me teach you about the crime community. There are some people that are more into LawTube. Hello, RFM,
What's law tube?
LawTube, like the legal
Law tube?
aspects. LawTube, as we call it, YouTube
Oh,
for the law.
okay.
That's you, RFM. Um, the legal aspects of a trial and the case and of the criminal trial. And there are more people, some people are intrigued by the mystery when you don't know who did something, and trying to sleuth and figure it out and bring clues. And let me just say that the true crime community has done a tremendous job of solving crimes. Finding Gabby Petito is one of those, with a lot of attention. And then there are people that are interested in the story, and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and we do those on our channel too. We do the research and lay it out so people can understand. And I think that's a bit of like, again, like, how could this happen? Like, how could that happen? And I think that women in general, women have to protect I know that men have to protect their families too, but women are there with the children oftentimes, at least through evolution and history. I'm talking historically, day in and day out. And they are, historically speaking, not as strong as men, historically speaking, females. And they are more likely the victims of violent crime from a stranger.
Mhm.
More men are murdered, but it's oftentimes for a different reason. But like strangers committing a crime on another, the victim is often the woman.
Yes.
So women, I think in general, have always thought, and it can't be their brute strength throughout history that's always been able to protect them. So I think there's also this fearful, like, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our family? And we're more sort of like trying to understand this world. And, I do jump. I jump when I see a male approach me in a dark alley. It scares me. I don't go hanging out in dark alleys that often, but I did find myself one recently, like a couple months ago in Arizona. And I got scared of a guy there because women are often, we have to protect ourselves. And so I think that's one reason why women are more intrigued by crime too. And it's to understand the psychology of a killer or someone that could hurt them. And then I think there are some people that are more interested in the psychology of the crime. Some people are more interested in the mystery. So there are a lot of things in crime that people are interested in. That's not just, again, that moment of like, that happened and it was gruesome. Crime is a lot more complex than that. And it affects us in many, many ways. And very often, those that are into crime were victims themselves. And they're trying to process what happened to them. In fact, if you go to CrimeCon, I'm attending CrimeCon in September in Denver. It happens once a year. It's huge. And people are like, is it like Comic-Con? Like, this is so crazy. Do you guys go there dressed as serial killers? Like, no.
It's like
Most of the
Comic-Con, but
people,
with fewer bullets.
most of the people that attend CrimeCon, or a big portion of the people that attend CrimeCon, were victims themselves.
Hmm.
And they are going there, and it's almost like trauma bonding a little bit. Like, this happened to me and I'm trying to process it. And or this happened to me and I want to speak to it and let others know that it's okay. And most victims, like I said, were never planning to be victims ever, ever. And they don't know what to do. And they have to deal with that and the aftermath. And a lot of it is also just simply empathy, meeting people where they are and their pain and their sorrow, including the families of the perpetrators that we oftentimes forget too.
Yeah.
How would it feel to have a son that ended up murdering somebody, and then to deal with that? And everybody's there for the victim, of course, but what about you dealing with that? So there is such a wide range of reasons people are fascinated with crime, and it's not simply morbid, and it isn't necessarily unhealthy. And I am a strong believer that it helps us understand human beings more when we dare to delve into crime and how it affects people.
That's great. Some people do prefer the sympathetic approach. Others prefer the Charles Bronson response to crime. But we've got
Yes.
a listener ready to come on the show. I got so many questions, but we got to give the listeners a chance here, Lauren. And this is JG. JG, I think these are initials. JG, how are you doing?
Good. Very good. I just wanted to compliment Lauren. I watch probably everything she puts out, to be honest with you, because it's so well done.
Oh,
Especially
thank you.
involving kind of LDS related stuff. I actually was like a county commissioner for like 12 years in Utah County, so encountered just a lot of kind of weird criminal stuff, unique to the, but I did have one question. You kind of mentioned the Rod Meldrum platform and relationship. I've kind of heard you cover the other things, but I was wondering what the relationship you see there of, that work, the Firm Foundation, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm glad Rod Meldrum hasn't committed a crime. I want to be clear of that I know of. So I'm actually glad you asked him, that I hope that I did make that clear. He's not like responsible for any of the criminals I've talked about today. But Rod Meldrum runs the Firm Expo, and he used to speak with Chad Daybell. Again, that doesn't make him guilty of a crime. A lot of good people, were friends with Chad Daybell. But I think that where Rod Meldrum comes in is sort of this ongoing community that is growing, and I think it's fair to call it an ideology. Like I said, I vote both Republican and Democrat. That's fine, but where do politics finally become an ideology of extreme belief and mixes with religion? And I think it's very dangerous when extreme politics and extreme religion sort of blend. And I also think that's where like conspiracy theories and extreme belief sort of blends. And I think that Rod Meldrum holds some of those beliefs and has created a space for a lot of people to explore those beliefs together. And I will conclude again by saying Rod Meldrum is not responsible for any crime or criminal.
Sure.
But it's a community that's forming.
So what did you see as a relationship between the preppers and the Rod Meldrum, those groups? Were they kind of all the same? I'm just curious because I'm familiar with that just because I've been to those conferences.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if someone in chat, by the way, could go find, I'm going to answer that, but if someone in chat could go find my backstory for Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell and pin it, that would be the best. It's a long form answer to your question. I would love that. I think it's like the main video right now. The full story. I'll find out what it's called. But to answer it, the too long didn't read or too long didn't watch version, the prepper community holds a lot of extreme beliefs that the call out is going to be happening, that the apocalypse is near, that the call out will be where the leaders of the church reach out to the most righteous of members, who will then go to the mountain, to the white tents, and prepare and gather the 4,400, what is it? I just forgot the 140,000.
44.
And that is the 140, and this is all on a vow, which is a prepper website that was started in the East Idaho area by Roger K. Young, who I credit with sort of creating this idea of the call out using old speeches from prophets and old historical contexts, and has sort of created a community of extreme preppers around it. So I'm not talking about simple food storage. I'm talking about an entire story surrounding this. And that's also the story surrounding Chad Daybell's apocalyptic novels, as well as Tom Harrison's Visions of Glory. And these beliefs sort of create and become extreme. The speech Chad Daybell gave the day he met Lori Vallow, we also have that on our channel. We're the only ones that have that. We were given that. He talks about exactly what's going to happen. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people listening to him in St. George, Utah, where he explains that they're going to actually start and come through Ivan's, Utah, the refugees. And then Jody Hildebrandt created her Ivan's bunker, where she had all this food storage and was preparing. And it's very much in this belief system with this extreme prepping is this idea that people are going to become zombies and be inhabited by evil spirits, and that the saints would have to take it upon themselves to act as God and kill some of these evil spirits. Yeah, this is all this belief system. And so when you ask about the prepping, that's where we're going. And then it just goes further. I see, like, I'm digging out a rabbit hole and I can keep going and it becomes a crater. So for me, when it comes to this Daybell case, it's about the start of this belief system. And Mike and Nancy James started preparing a people that sort of went with this and taught about people to have their own visions of Christ and to believe those visions and to believe in this extreme apocalyptic vision that I would say not all LDS people believe in. And it's growing in number. And it's the base of Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, as well as Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. I don't know if that helps.
Lauren, I think that all Mormons, if they're believing Mormons, have to believe this kind of stuff in some way or other. I think it's just, when you're talking about these people, they really believe it. They believe it with specificity. And I mean, how can you be a Latter-day Saint without believing we're living in the last days, right? And Jesus is coming back soon. God knows President Nelson has told us that enough. But it's this
the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not the present-day saints, the Latter-day Saints. So yes.
It's in the name. So yeah, but then something takes them over beyond just, yes, this is something we do, to this is something we're actively doing, and with all of these bells and whistles associated with it. JG, thank you for calling in. We got a few more people on the phone.
Okay, I just want to mention one thing. What
yes, sir?
Most was I actually worked with Chad Daybell's father, and who that's why it was so shocking, kind of like, to hear all this, because he's
with Jack.
Yeah, like anything, as far as I know, other than probably he knew what his son was doing. But anyway, yeah,
that's fascinating. I have a lot of empathy for Chad Daybell's family and his parents. So wow, yeah.
So okay, thank you,
JG. Thanks for calling in. All right, now we have let me see here, Keenan. I think Keenan on the phone with a question, I think, for Lauren. Keenan, are you there?
Yeah.
Keep trying, Keenan. We could hear you, but it was a little fuzzy.
Oh, yeah. that okay? Is that any better?
Are you on speakerphone? Is there any way you can just be directly on the phone?
Is there any way you can break out of the cellar?
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. It's on my computer, so I just went.
That's better. Whatever you just did.
Oh, well, I'll go ahead and let me know if you can hear me. Yeah, I have a couple thoughts, but one first off, I started watching Hidden True Crime for Mormon discussion. This was kind of a shock. It just was suddenly weird. By now, of both Mormon discussions, hidden to see you guys do this collaboration. Awesome to see. And one I wanted to share was kind of been post-COVID of just a lapse. I wasn't really going to church like a lot of people. I hadn't made any definitive decision or really investigated my. And what do that was true. I was watching who has no exposure to any of Mormonism, and he was doing a reaction video to a YouTuber who was talking about Ruby, and this was before serious allegations came. And as that, I realized that what I was seeing and seeing a lot of controversy.
Keenan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is too much for me. I can no more. The king's to blame. So if you could, all we're getting is these huge pauses like every other beat.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's the line, which I hope we're not paying for the subscription anymore. Is there any way you can click the link? Also, Allison, you're on the line too. Is there any way you can click on the link and join us in studio by StreamYard so we don't have this problem, which is not the first time we've had it. And I'm suspecting that if we take Allison's call, we're going to have the same problem, but we can try.
Yeah, same thing. So
can you do that, Keenan?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Allison, you want to give it a go?
We can try her, but it's
already jumped in.
Problem. Let me try. Here it is. Allison, how are you?
Hi, are you hear me?
Yeah, it's doing the same thing. Is there any chance you could come into the studio and it'll just be much more clear? You're going to break up every third word or so.
And we won't be able to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and us in the audience is going to get quite annoyed. So,
oh my gosh,
come into the studio. I just put the link in the live chat.
Allison, please click the link. Join us in the studio. It's working for Keenan, and we're going to put him on here in just a second. Thanks, Allison. Sorry for the problems. Keenan. There's Keenan. Now I can't hear you at all, and it's much better. And now I can't hear Bill. I think I just went deaf.
No, that's not the case. Okay, so Keenan, you just got to get your sound there on. Yep. Go to settings.
There we go. There we go.
There it is.
Oh, thank goodness. Now, Keenan,
all right.
Can you give us the thumbnail version of what it is you were saying before?
I'll talk fast. I was watching a streamer. He was talking about Ruby Frankie before all the big crimes came out. And I remember watching, and this was when I hadn't really investigated my own faith and my relationship to Mormonism, but I hadn't been at church for a while. And I remember thinking, this is kind of just a normal family. It was a little extreme for the way I grew up, but I knew families like that. And it's that set me down a course. And from there, I really got into the true crime stuff before I even got into Mormon discussions and kind of this whole Mormonism world. And so it was, hidden true crimes have been a big part of that. Because for me, my first reaction is to be like, oh, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of weird. And then just the fact that I could look at this stuff and feel like it's a little bit too familiar to me. It's a little bit too okay. I don't treat my kids that way, but I know other people that do. And it's kind of just a strict Mormon family. And so my overall question is, I know there's a lot of thoughts about maybe the darkest and the strangest, most esoteric aspects of Mormon doctrine that contribute to this kind of stuff. But I also think there's a lot of benign and even good things about Mormon culture that create vulnerabilities or even exacerbate impulses in people that are unhealthy. And an example I give, which I never thought of until someone pointed out to me, it was calling children who are 12 years old, calling them young women. And that seems like, or young men. And that seems like an edifying and uplifting way to treat young people. But on the flip side is this vulnerability it creates to think of children as as adults that can consent, and it maybe creates some vulnerability of okay, I'm a young man now. I went on, I don't know what they call them now, but we call them splits or something, where I would be sent out to do. It wasn't with maybe it's a different thing, but with other Melchizedek priesthood holders to do home teaching. Or, that I would normally go with my dad, but then sometimes I would be paired up with another adult man, just me and him. Hated it. It was super awkward. Nothing ever happened to me, but I never would even thought that was a possibility. My parents would have never thought that was a person that they shouldn't trust or might want to be a little more careful with.
Yes.
So I guess that's kind of the topic that I wanted to touch on or hear your all thoughts. Is like, what are the positive or seemingly benign aspects of Mormon culture that maybe create some of these blind spots, vulnerabilities, and kind of some of these strange and extreme behaviors in people?
I can share a few things when it comes to being. I love what you just shared. Also, I just want to point out too, like you point out like where true crime helps, right? It wasn't what put you down the path of questioning beliefs, wasn't Mormon discussions, even though it's good. It was crime. So I just want to point that out. Like there's a lot of reasons why people process a lot of their lives through crime.
Yeah. Can I quickly just say on that point, because this came up earlier, and why people watch true crime? My personal belief is like no matter how crazy these stories are, everyone is capable of getting to a point. I think there's some rare conditions that are maybe diagnosable and problematic. But like you're saying, it's like, for me, it was looking at these things and being like, what would keep me from getting that extreme? If I had gone down another path, maybe I would have been, I don't think I would have gone all the way to murder, but I think true crime for me helps me and I think people generally see how certain conditions and environments can create pressure in situations that lead people to these horrible places. And
yeah, well, Lauren may be the exception, but I like to think that under the right circumstances, any one of us could commit murder.
Everyone has a dark side. Everyone has a dark side. How about we just say that? What one would commit violence, whether that's emotional or anything. I think that everyone has a dark side and self-awareness, again, and knowing about ourselves and knowing about crime and knowing about human beings is important, the things that let me just talk about like victims. The thing that can make those that are LDS victims of crime, I think, are the same things that are beautiful, that I find beautiful in the LDS faith, but they also can be problematic and frightening. I love that we consider one another our brothers and sisters. I love that about Mormonism. It taught me to be empathic. It taught me to care about everyone, that we are, our brother's keeper, to be compassionate, to help one another. It also can help when it comes to being a victim, though, even a victim of abuse or coercive control or domestic violence. It creates this idea that one has to forgive over and over and over again when you are in a relationship that is unhealthy and you think, but, I'm to love them. I have to help them. They're my brother, they're my sister, they're my eternal spouse even. I think that this idea that we have to forgive and forget, and everybody's human, and people make mistakes and they can repent and overcome, or it's an addiction. These are the things actually I talk about in my book, Escaping Emotional Abuse, because, you're taught that if you love the Lord and they love the Lord, then everything should be okay. And if they're attending church and they hold a high position of power, or they haven't been excommunicated, then certainly they're okay. I think this idea of excommunicating can be very, very dangerous. I wish we would do what the Catholics do. Once a Catholic, always a Catholic, because this idea that it's a measurement of worth and soul and sin, and whether or not you can trust someone. super dangerous just because someone is LDS and can attend the temple. You know who was attending the temple? Chad, Daybell, and Lori Vallow. You know who else was? Elizabeth Smart's kidnapper. I hate the temple. I've always hated the temple. To me, the temple is just a place where people pretend to be something when actually they're not. The idea of you know, if something's broken, you fix it. You know, again, this idea that everybody can be made whole again in Christ's eyes. He's our judge. We don't judge people. These are the things I learned growing up that I find beautiful. They're beautiful. They taught me compassion and love and empathy and forgiveness. And at the same time, it makes us victims.
Mhm.
And it makes us gullible, and it makes us not stand up for ourselves or for bad behavior. Or as I say, to just tell somebody to fuck off because they don't deserve your compassion or your love. Those are the things we don't learn, you know. So there's this balance that creates this victimhood, or like I said, to trust someone because they're in this position of authority, this idea of authority and trusting authority. Although, you know, I tell my son, question authority, just not your mother. But, you know, question authority, you know, this idea that like, no, like there is no ultimate expert in anything. And maybe the ultimate expert we're all worshiping, which is Jesus Christ. Like maybe we need to understand that Jesus Christ is someone that we can look up to, but there is no ultimate expert. There's no ultimate authority. These are the things that can make those that are LDS or religious victims of abuse. And I think it's so important to process this together as a community because, like I said, there are also beautiful things in the faith that you don't have to necessarily throw them away, but we've got to talk about it. And this idea that the church will say no one should be married to an abuser. No one should be with an abusive person, and you can divorce someone that's abusive. Okay, sure. But what are we teaching? Forgive the abuser. Everyone can be made whole in Christ. Everybody can repent. They need therapy. It's an addiction, but they're your brother. They're your sister. If you're broken, you fix it. You don't throw it away. And this idea that, you know, that you're with someone eternally, which I also think is beautiful. You know, that's like so romantic. It's so romantic. And like, I want to be with my husband, who I consider my soulmate forever. You know, we got married in Kolob Canyon, and that was like a part of our like vows, like the idea that we can't make it there without one another. You know, it's like such a cool metaphor, in my opinion. But yet, when it comes to being a victim of crime, it's a horrible manipulative tool to use on somebody. You can't divorce someone because we've got this family and you're going to break up our eternal family. That's bullshit. Get out. You can be with the person you love the most forever, and you don't need to worry about that. Things like that. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I could see, as you're describing this, such a contrast in language when comparing like what some of these potentially dark impulses are within the church. For example, repentance. A big word we use in our family with our kids is repair, which can only be done between the person you've wronged. I can only apologize to my kids. I can't go repent to a God and be good with God if my kids haven't been, if the repair hasn't been done between the person I've wronged, and things like authority. And I do see the church seemingly making an effort to adapt some language, but because there's so much baggage with this old language, like authority, maybe we should call it stewardship, but then you also have to change the whole story you're telling about what makes a bishop a bishop. It's not what's the word where they can spot problems? Discernment. It's not some like some infallible gift and expertise and all this stuff. It's that they're responsible for caring for people, you know? So I think it's like language, but also the story around that language really needs a lot of.
But if Mormonism changes everything it would need to in order to give people a healthy framing for human life, it probably has to change too much to still be Mormonism.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm a little. I think fewer and fewer people. I think there's still a lot of people who care that it stays what it's always claimed to be. I think there's a lot of people.
In other words, how can Mormonism teach healthy consent while still maintaining loyal obedience to the top 15, for instance? How can the church walk away from sexual sin is next to murder when it's inside its scriptures? And the first one you came on and said, Keenan, was this idea that the framing we have for our youth is young men and young women, which now forces all of us, both ex-Mormons and historical nuts, whenever we're talking about, I don't mean nuts as in crazy, I just mean people who delve deep into the history, that anytime we talk about polygamy, I'm almost forced as an ex-Mormon into this language of Joseph Smith married young women. And that's not real. He married children. He had intimate relationships with underage children as young as 14 years old and talked to one about a future relationship as young as 12. Mormonism has too many things that are unhealthy that it can't just change all of that overnight, and maybe doesn't even want to.
Yeah, I think the window of opportunity is as people leave, like myself. Talking to my mom, I think my mom doesn't care that the church maintains the story that she's always known her whole life, because now she says, my dad was a good man who wasn't Mormon, talking from her perspective. My grandparents weren't Mormon, but they were good people. And a God that is going to exclude them from heaven and going to keep me away from them is not a God I want to believe. So she's happy just saying, I don't get it, but I don't think that the way they're teaching that makes sense. And when I chose to leave the church, she discarded all the beliefs that would keep her from maintaining an eternal relationship with me, whether I believe in it or not. So I think as more people leave, the opportunity is to say, we need to be more open to interpretation and allow more people to fit themselves, their loved ones, and the things they care about into this framework, because it's too hard to
Really good. Hey,
thank you
so much.
Thank you so much. Big fan, Lauren. Thank you for doing this, and keep it up.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Keenan. And it looked like there was a light coming down over Keenan's face. I thought it was going to get translated there any second. So we got one other person who's on the line. It's not Al. Is this Allison? It looks like Randall Bell.
Not Allison. Hi, Randall.
Hi, Lauren. Hey, I'm just really enjoying your thoughts here. And I got a question about self-care, how you deal with it. And I'll tell you the perspective I'm asking from. And that is, I studied disasters in my career. And, I've worked on the O.J. Simpson case, John Benet Ramsey. But I, like what piqued my interest is when you said you don't have more of a curiosity, because when I got called on Heaven's Gate, they asked me to come right down, and I said, I'll wait till the bodies are out of the house. I just didn't want to see that stuff. So my question boils down to, do you do kind of the normal self-care stuff, or have you found anything special? Because when I'm done with work, I don't really talk about it much. RFM knows this. We rarely talk about, if ever, talk about crime. Although you're a criminal defense attorney, RFM, and I deal in crime every day. But I just kind of shut it off and go to the beach. What is it, insights that you have on self-care?
That's a work in progress. I'll take advice. Any you have. I have a psychiatrist appointment where I'm hoping to ask him for anti-anxiety medication. No, I need to work on self-care, and I'm still processing it. I'm lucky to have a significant other that's my co-host that I can process things with. And I mean that sincerely. That's not like a cop out or a joke. I am lucky to have that. Not many people are able to go home to that, right? But that's not that we both need more. And I think that I work a lot, and it helps me to avoid my lack of self-care. So it's I need to work on it. So any advice you have? I actually am fascinated by your career right now. What do you have a PhD in? May I ask?
Socioeconomics is kind of an overlap between how sociological issues, specifically disasters, affect the economics of what's going on. It's a really weird, narrow niche. But
he's the king of the niche.
I am the king of the niche, yes. But it
I'm
is a niche.
fascinated, and the cases you've covered are fascinating too. Email me. I want to. We should talk. It's you're fascinating.
Yeah,
But
I mean, the one that really hit me emotionally, because I see a lot of crimes, and I'm about to go up to Northern California, it's a serial killer thing our office was involved with. But the one that hit me really hard emotionally, which surprised me because I've seen a lot, was the Pulse nightclub in Florida with the gay nightclub that was shot up. And the owner took me inside there, and I don't even want to describe it or I'll break down, but it was so horrific. And that's where I just thought I got to pay attention to self-care. And I'm always intrigued with people that deal in a similar or peripheral area, because there's so much you can take. The World Trade Center, I worked on that, and I was there when the flames were still coming out of the ground. That really hit me hard emotionally. So I'm just kind of like, I want to take care of myself. I want to do my job, and we've got a great, track record in the courtroom. But I also don't want to, blow up, emotionally from the stuff I see every day.
a lot of people ask my husband about this too. He does this. More like you as a. I chose to get into true crime, but let me be honest though. I chose not knowing how much we'd grow and not knowing how many cases we'd cover. And I'm gonna be very honest. It's hard. Sometimes I'm like, can I just take a month off because this is hard? And now it's a family business. And so it's no, I've got to keep going. And we also get the emails and the people that need us. And I do believe that we bring value, and I do want to help. And so I keep going. My husband also, though, who's done this in his career, many people will ask him that as well. And he, I'm trying to even think what he said. He doesn't have a great system, but he has sort of explained how he does sort of just like have to take a break. This is one thing I've learned about him. He'll go in for the interview and the evaluation, and he'll come back home and have like a lot of empathy. Like he listened for so long, and it was hard. And then as he starts writing his report, I've learned that he starts to get angrier at the perpetrator, and then he feels anger. And that's actually oddly when I feel like he needs the break, is after writing that entire report. And I think one thing he has said is, he's suffered, and he talks openly about this, so I can too. My husband has suffered with depression his entire life. And I think for him, sort of dealing with the darker things in life is, almost like a natural thing, and something that he doesn't avoid. Like it's, I don't know, but somehow he has said that he's always sort of been drawn to this, like processing the darker things in life. But it's hard. It's hard. We have the same thing. We had a police officer listen to us and write us an email where he said he listened to our entire Beyond the Veil series, and he wept. His wife had been trying to get him to listen, and he thanked John for humanizing these people that he was a homicide detective he'd been dealing with for years. Because for people like you and him and my husband that do this day in and day out, quietly, privately, I think it affects you guys in ways you don't even know, that you can't even process. And that's what he wrote us and said. He's like, as a homicide detective, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never listened to a true crime podcast. And my wife finally convinced me to listen to you, Dr. John. And he said, I found myself just sobbing, but oddly, thanking us for humanizing the people that he had been dealing with. And I think I don't have any solid answers for you, but I just want you to know that it affects people severely. And I think one reason that there are victims that are attending CrimeCon, and there are victims that are listening to us, and people like you that are listening to us, is because that in some ways that is self-care. Like when you humanize a crime, and when you talk about it in ways that we can process our own lives, that in itself is what victims sort of need. That's why they're attending CrimeCon. That's why they're listening to crime, and in an odd way that is taking care of yourself. To, to almost be like, I don't know how to handle this, and I am human, and this is hard. That is why victims are here tonight and will be speaking at CrimeCon. And I think, like I said, going back to what I have been able to do, I am lucky that my, significant other is in this with me, so that, when our son isn't around, we can process this together and deal with this together. But I do think there needs to be more conversation around crime that isn't just saying this is a morbid curiosity, because it's not. All of us have to deal with crime. And that's what I keep going back to. For people that say, why are people into crime? Because that is being human. Because look at this, like, we're all facing it. The atrocities, walking in to that nightclub and seeing that. I saw the autopsy photos of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and I will never forget seeing JJ with a little 7-year-old with duct tape across his mouth. It'll be in my brain forever. One of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, forever. That's evil. And so I think to understand that processing crime and talking about this together isn't unhealthy, it's healthy, because this is therapy for so many people.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I heard once that really hit me was, behind every statistic is a person. And we're in the business that sounds like your husband's into and that I'm in. You get to know these people. I lost it once. I was giving a speech, and some guy in the front row, he raised his hand and made a really nasty remark about Denise Brown. And I lost it on him. I told him to fuck off, go to hell, in front of the whole crowd. I didn't care, because I know Denise and I know what she went through, and
humanizing.
So,
you know her, you humanize. She's a human. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's what a lot of people do is they, I've talked to firemen that say, they have kind of a morbid sense of humor, but I guess that's a coping mechanism. That's really not my style. But anyway, I've taken enough time. I just wanted to see if you had any special insights, and appreciate it. I'm new to you and your start listening.
Great. And you know what? You mentioned dark humor. It's not really your thing, or humor isn't your thing. I want to say it's actually become a big kind of part of me. And I have compassion for people that do use some dark humor. And, you'll see that with police officers too on a crime scene, and they'll be joking, and people are like, on the body cam footage at a crime scene, and people are like, how dare they? And I think if you don't laugh, sometimes you cry. And, and you know what? Some victims, like, I know that with the Lori Daybell and Chad Daybell case, like you, we became very close to the surviving victims of that case. And, they had to joke. I would go every weekend during Chad Daybell's trial. I would do breakfast with Kay and Larry Woodcock, whose grandson JJ was murdered, Tyler was murdered, as well as Tammy Daybell's aunt, for 3 or 4 hours every night of the trial, or not night, sorry, every Sunday of this weeks-long trial. And we would sit there for like 4 hours, do these brunches, and we would laugh. And we would be making fun of Chad and Lori in ways that it might be hard for some people to understand, but in many ways, sometimes too, that is a coping mechanism and self-care that also people need to be a little bit more compassionate about. I mean, we were, just, everything. So yeah, that was something I did with JJ Vallow's grandparents and Tammy Daybell's aunt every Sunday during the trial, and we would laugh and just make fun of these idiots. But in the end, it's not funny. They killed their loved ones, murdered them. And yet sometimes you just have to let that dark humor happen too, and it's not wrong.
No, I get it, and I hope I didn't say sound virtue signaling or self-righteous.
No, not at all. You said it didn't work for you. You said it didn't work for you,
humor,
which made me think,
but it's more pull my finger humor. But the dark humor stuff is not doesn't do it for me. But
Yeah.
I like you. I get it why people do it, and if I were in their positions, I may be doing the exact same thing. But anyway, I'm always looking for ways to just take better care of myself, considering the business I'm in. So appreciate
It's
your
a
time.
yeah. And I wish I had a better answer. Many people ask me, and
I thought
it's
that was a
hard.
great answer.
Okay.
Basically, you work really hard and you suppress everything, is what I heard, Lauren. No, actually, the good answer part was about how what you do helps other people process their stuff. And so what you do helps people through therapeutically, at least a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you. Good. Thank
Yeah.
you for understanding what I was trying to say.
No, I think you said it great. Randall, thank you so much for calling in. I've got one more slide to show Lauren, and then we're going to leave. I want you to talk about this as little or as much as possible. This will be a complete surprise to you. Randall, thank you again.
Thank you, Randy.
Have a great night. I'll talk to you later, okay?
See you guys.
All right, bye-bye. And that one slide now is this. The Derek Corden homicide investigation. We did a 3-part series on this at Mormonism Live a couple of years ago.
You cover
And then I
crime
got
too.
a phone call from you. Was it half a year ago? Time flies. It was some substantial amount of time ago, bringing this subject up.
Yes. Yeah. I know this well. See, you guys are a crime channel too.
Yes, well, we would do it full time if we had any sense about us.
Sweet Derek. Yeah.
Did you want to mention anything about why you'd called me and your thoughts about this?
This is heartbreaking. There's Bonnie Corden. Bonnie Corden was she the Young Women's president? Remind me, was it Young Women's?
Oh my gosh.
She's now the president. She's now the president of University of
South Virginia University.
South Virginia University. But
yes, and so for everybody who doesn't know, okay, I'm so sorry. I just kind of sprung this. I was expecting everybody to know exactly what we're talking about, and perhaps that's not fair.
well, I think many people don't know, which is why this is fascinating.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. So what happened is Bonnie Corden, who is a person of some eminence in the church, and she got where she is in church leadership by not doing what the prophet said for women to do. Instead, she pursued a career, and it paid off. So she had started telling the story, especially in one particular instance. There's been 3 venues in which she's told this particular story differently, a little bit differently, to stress different points. But she had made this, and it might have been in the Hear Him video, I think, where she talks about this as one of them. And she talks about her grandson, who's Derek Corden. So that's her son's son, who tragically passed away during a family vacation to Florida, to Disney World in Florida, at the hotel they were staying at during the evening after a day at the theme park.
Yes.
And she tells it to make a spiritual point. But then somebody out there thought, well, she's given us enough information. I guess I could see if there's any police reports. No, it wasn't the police reports. It was the Health and Social Services. It was basically CPS, Florida CPS, I believe, who did a report about this. And somebody got a hold of it, right? And they put it up, I think it was at Reddit. And that raised more questions. And so I thought, well, what the heck? I'll do a FOIA request, because I think it was Orange County. It was the sheriff's office. I got some things back. And then in the things that I got back, as typically will happen, as you probably know, Lauren, there are things in there in the police reports that I have that reference things that I didn't get.
Right. Right.
So I requested the things I didn't get and explained to the custodian of records why it was that I know that they exist, because they're in the stuff you gave me. And they said, no, that's it. So at that point, I sent a nice letter to the sheriff, her boss. I think I sent the letter to her, and then I CC'd the sheriff and made it very clear I was CCing her boss. That's probably the way I did it. That I really wanted the stuff because you're holding out on me. And boy, that was a real quick turnaround. And we got video of interviews, for crying out loud.
Interview with Bonnie Corden herself, a police interview.
Was it Bonnie? Did we get Bonnie?
Yeah. I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow.
I called you. You got everything. And then we also requested and also have the police interview with Bonnie Corden.
Oh my gosh. It was pretty exciting. Well, it's exciting in the sense of what we're talking about. Obviously, it's a terrible thing because the kid dies and it looks like one of his parents probably killed him. which is pretty awful.
His death, sweet Derek Corden's, it states, is it manner of death? I get manner and cause messed up. Homicide. It states homicide. That's what's most important, I think, is that you're not just saying that. It states it on the documents that you received from a FOIA request in Florida, that Derek Corden's death is a homicide, which is why you have a Derek Corden homicide investigation. Bonnie Corden herself was interviewed by police, as were others, and nobody's been arrested or charged in this crime, and we can call it a crime because it is listed as a homicide. And I think the thing that was most shocking to me, that I'm still most upset about, and why Hidden True Crime continues to look into this and has done our own FOIA requests and has been talking to you and to Bill, is this idea that Bonnie Corden, who was a leader in the church at the time, a well-respected authority, we've talked about authority, used this story of her grandson's tragic death as a faith-promoting story, not sharing the truth about what happened. She didn't mention her own police interview. And not just once, but multiple times used it. She also used it at BYU Education Week and other places, even shaming an airline attendant who didn't show her the compassion she felt she deserved when returning home, with Derek's car seat and no Derek. And that her speeches remain up there. I don't know what happened. I'm not going to pretend to know what happened. I certainly have. I've certainly speculated on what has happened. I won't speculate publicly. But the fact that this is a homicide and seems to be being covered up by a leader in the LDS Church, Bonnie Corden, is very upsetting to me.
Yeah, the police reports and the medical reports. Let's start with the medical report very quickly. Medical report. The conclusion was that the child had died of a brain hemorrhage caused by blunt force trauma. The parents were both interviewed extensively and in detail, and neither of their stories did anything close to accounting for the injuries that ended up killing this kid.
Nor did they stay the same, in my opinion.
Yes, their testimonies contradict each other in places.
Correct.
And the father's testimony contradicts himself.
Correct.
Right. For anybody who forgets, this is the story is that they're at the hotel room. It's in the middle of the night. Nothing untoward has really happened except the kid has been like crying or something. And then all of a sudden, he's not breathing. And boy, it's really so fuzzy and vague and contradictory right before he's not breathing, if you know what I mean in the stories. And then they wait about, was it 20 minutes? Is it half an hour? They wait in the motel room. They don't pick up the phone and call 911 like I think most people would.
They don't go down the hallway to get his or her sister, who is a NICU nurse.
Yeah. There's a nurse in the family group in the room next door, and they don't go get her, according to the story.
A nurse
they don't wake up
specifically in childcare emergencies.
Yes, and there's nothing about waking up mom or dad or anything. There's just this whole blank space of 20 minutes to a half an hour. And then instead of calling 911, I mean, what the hell's going on in that 15 to 20 minute period, when nothing's happening? I'll bet a lot's happening. And then the father, which is Bonnie's son, sends the mother in a car, in the rental car, to the hospital in a city they don't know, with the kid who can't breathe in the seat, the passenger seat next to her. And he doesn't go. He waits. And then later on, he joins them there.
Can you imagine trying to drive your kid in an emergency to a hospital in a city that you don't live in, that you're visiting for a vacation, instead of calling 911 while your kid is dying or dead?
No, I can't. And she describes the experience, and it sounds like a horror ride.
It does.
where a
Yeah,
kid is
the mother
basically
weeps.
expiring
The
in the
mother
seat
weeps
next to
in
her.
yeah, she
Sorry,
weeps
go ahead.
in her police investigation. You know, the mother. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I understand, and I know that you talked about maybe a collaboration, which was very nice on your part. And I know it hasn't happened, and now I'm holding you to. No, I'm not. I'm not holding
Yeah,
you to
you
account.
can. You can.
It's just
I haven't covered it yet.
we talked about how this isn't like your normal episodes. There's no charge. That's the first thing. There's no trial. There's no story that you would normally cover.
Right. The only thing we have is that Derek Corden was murdered. This little boy. But right. That's in the documents. And you're right. I reached out. You two gave me all of your documents. You did. I want you to know you were pioneers in this. You did incredible work because it took you many, many months to get everything, and you had to push really hard. It's not always easy. After talking to both of you and receiving everything you had, Hidden True Crime decided to do our own FOIA request because we just felt we needed to see if there was anything else, and just make sure that we had what police had. And
Did you get anything else?
nothing extra, but I do believe we have everything now that you received, and I think that your work created that. Though we didn't have to wait and push as much as you did. We did have to wait. We had to wait months, but I think you really had to like say, "Come on, there's more." And we didn't have to. They just said, "There's more coming. Give us some time." And then it came.
I know there's been an awful lot of other crime happening, and a lot of it for Mormons. Is there any ETA that you think there will be for this show to materialize about Derek?
Yeah, I think soon. I've always said soon. Because of the nature of this, as you've pointed out, there are no charges. There, no active investigation at this moment. Like there's, maybe there's an investigation that I don't know about, but nothing I can see that's active right now. For that reason, I've felt like I've had to script this really tightly, make sure I have every fact. Again, that's why I did my own FOIA request too, is I felt the need that this type of episode is going to need to be very tight and checked with a fine-tooth comb. And so I've written it actually I've written it once, but then rewritten, like gone over it several times. Don't have a solid ending objective. And I know that objective sounds odd, but at Hidden True Crime, one thing we always do is ask how we're going to bring value to these crimes and cases. And so it's just something I've been sitting on for a while and processing. And I've talked it out with many people as well. And so I think it will be soon. But I feel like there's just something I'm missing in my script. I don't know what it is. I'm waiting for this. I'm glad we're talking about it because I feel like I'm waiting for this.
A computer drop?
Yeah, something. But I believe it will be soon. And you guys, I just want to commend you for broaching the subject and taking true crime to your channel and talking about this in the 3-part series you did. And I think everyone should watch it. And Hidden True Crime is certainly on it. And we have been discussing it now, as you point out, for 18 months. And like I said, I think to me, where I am right now with my objective and how I feel about it, and there is a little boy who didn't get justice. That upsets me. It also upsets me when people rewrite history. Bonnie Corden's done that. To use something that is frightening, homicide of a child as a faith-promoting story, and to use that for your own benefit and your own ego, honestly, to rewrite this history of her grandson upsets me.
It takes a special kind of cynicism to do that, doesn't it?
Mhm. And I'm sure she wants to rewrite her family's history for her own sanity, maybe,
Yes.
her own, that's what we do. It's what Lori Daybell continues to do behind bars when she says that her children were not murdered and that they're in a better place. That's certainly the denial that as she is finding safety in. And I'm sure that Bonnie Corden is processing a family tragedy through denial, but not just denial, rewriting history, and then promoting this history to the entire world.
Mhm.
That again is to me an abuse of power and upsetting to me.
Which
And
ironically, if she had not done, would not have come to anyone's attention.
no one would have known, but people are curious in this day and age. We're curious, and we can all do our own research from our laptops. And because of those faith promoting stories, people were curious about how Derek died. And again, what it states, whether there have been charges or not, what it states is that this was a homicide of a toddler.
Lauren, thanks for being here. The book is Escaping Emotional Abuse. The podcast is Hidden True Crime. Where can people find your book and the podcast?
That's so kind. Yeah, and thank you for promoting my book. It's not something I've like fully promoted. I wrote it in 2019 until I was on Mormon Stories recently, and I do write it through a woman of faith. So I do feel like it's an important book to share on this in this podcast, as well as others where I finally talk about my own faith. And then our podcast, Hidden True Crime, you can find it on YouTube, Hidden True Crime, or you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, also Hidden True Crime. A way you can support us, a way you can support us for free is to leave us a good review on Apple. A way that you can support us is also though joining Patreon for a small fee a month, where we do exclusive episodes once a week, once every other week, where it's for our subscribers. We have an Apple subscription as well as a patreon.com/hidden-true-crime. For example, we posted an episode today that no one hears except for our subscribers, an hour-long podcast episode discussing the recent Manhattan shooting. And this young man, Shane, who went in and killed and murdered 4 people before he was killed. And we discussed that for an hour with Dr. John Matthias, my husband, who is a criminal and clinical. He's a forensic and clinical psychologist, Princeton educated, and has been assessing criminals for nearly 3 decades. And we, John, because he's a licensed psychologist, I am on our public podcast and YouTube channel more than he is. And as we've grown, that's happened. We was together as we've grown, we've realized, and so a lot of what he does now, sometimes we do feel more comfortable behind a paywall. And so we have those a private subscriber only episodes as well for our supporters. So
By the way, we got through all our phone calls without any hitches other than technical.
yeah, it was Allison that wanted to say something? We never heard from.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, Allison. My apologies. That phone line. All of a sudden, we started using it, and it brought back these horrible nightmares about that phone line. I don't know what it is. It's like a satcom from the 1970s or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lauren, thank you so much for being here. You are really a professional. I was shocked that you showed up. First off, I was shocked that you weren't going to be here. But then I was shocked that you showed up, and I was shocked that you showed up when your producer said, push it back 30 minutes. You go back and listen to it, and you'll hear me going, yeah, I'll bet. I don't think she's going to be here at all, and that's fine. That's okay. Take care of business, but we got it handled here. And then you show up, your face shows up down there, and I look up here, and it's exactly 30 minutes into the show.
Well, I want to thank my producer for making that happen. Yeah, I won't share exactly what happened, but I'll say I had a doctor's appointment earlier today. It did not go well. And we learned that a half hour before your show, I had to rush back.
That it didn't go well.
It didn't go well. I had to rush back to the doctors. And I'll share it. So people are like, I had some possible skin cancer removed from my back. So that's okay. So I'll just share it. At this point, it's like TMI anyway. People's minds might go worse.
That's like you're thinking, what are people going to think?
Are like going,
it really wasn't that
what
big
happened,
a deal.
right? There's going to be a rumor that I was pregnant or something tomorrow, so I might as well just share what this was. Which no, I'm not. So I had something removed from my back, and they stitched it. All was well, and like 30 minutes before our show, my TMI, but sorry, it was TMI for me too. My shirt was drenched in blood.
I know the feeling. Different area, but I know the feeling, Lauren.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was like,
is used to
oh
TMI.
my gosh, what's I didn't even know until I was going to change my shirt for this. And it was, and my poor producer who had the afternoon off because, you know, Taylor Swift was debuting her podcast. In fact, I'm surprised we have anybody here because 1 million people are watching Taylor Swift's podcast debut right now. She was like ready to roll. Like Taylor Swift's her girl. You know, if you want to know about self-care, that's my producer's self-care. And I was like, I mean, like here's where we are. I'm supposed to be on the show in a half hour. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So she calls you. She's like, just give us a half hour. She's calling my doctors while driving me back. And I've got a towel and like what's happening. So I got like, they took care of it. They got me right in because, you know, you have to. And we got there 15 minutes before my doctor's appointment closed, stitched it. Everything's okay. And they thought it was no big deal. I was panicking and here I am. So yeah.
And what a trooper and what a professional. It's absolutely amazing to me. Well, thank you. And thank your producer too. By the way, when she called on your phone and I was talking to you for about 3 minutes before she interrupted me and said it wasn't you, it was the producer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, cause yeah, I was just like panicking. I don't do blood well. So I'm sorry to those that also don't, which is also funny, right? I'm in crime. I don't want to see the stuff that I've had to see. And so I didn't want to, you know, I was freaking out. I was like, call him and tell him I'm coming. And then don't tell me what, you know, so we got in the car and drove off. So yeah, I'm good now. I'm good now.
Well, it was very exciting.
I better be good because I like this shirt. I better be okay. So.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh. So anything you wear is subject to. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. It's
well,
good.
I wish you the best. Thanks again for coming on the show. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime. Thank you again, Lauren. Everybody, big hand for Lauren Matthias.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. This is fun. This is nice.
Okay, Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Lauren.